From InGoal Magazine, the industry leader in net minding, this is InGoal Radio, the podcast, a presentation of The Hockey Shop, source for sports Surrey, thehockeyshop.com. As the summer of 2019 passes into the back half of July, more and more pros are getting back on the ice. Today, fresh off an early morning workout in Kelowna, you will hear from James Reimer, the 12-year pro, revealing why he became a goaltender and his thoughts on joining his fourth NHL organization after a trade to the Carolina Hurricanes. And for the segment of the audience that has the added responsibility of dealing with the media, Reimer also has some honest advice about handling situations that have the potential of being combative. After a one-week absence, Kevin Woodley returns to the Hockey Shop for the InGoal Gear segment. Woody runs through the 2X line of Bauer sticks, but with a slight twist with the visit, including a team of Source for Sports Surrey that offers up a backup goaltender. Yeah, a different battery, so to speak, for Woody to deal with this week. I'm your host, Darren Millard. Welcome to episode 27, InGoal Radio, back to being a three-man wolf pack as we bring in the co-founders of InGoal Magazine, David Hutchison and Kevin Woodley. And Woody, I noticed that you were here early, you were prepared, you were doing all your stretching, because after last week in which Hutch and I co-hosted the show solo for the first time, you might feel a little threatened.
Yeah, no, I had the foam rollers out, made sure that, the vibrating ones, little plug to the folks from Hyper Ice. Those are the best product on the market. The guys in the locker room tend to look at me a little funny when I pull out the giant vibrating foam rollers before a game, but I wanted to make sure I was loose and ready to step things up with you guys today.
He's fired up, Hutch. We got under his skin.
It's my favorite hobby.
I will say this. Between the three of us, I've noticed that the common denominator to having issues getting this podcast started is Woody, because we get together and to package this podcast should take about 25 minutes. But before we even start recording, when Woody's involved, we're about an hour, because you've got this going on and that going on, and you've heard this, and you're talking to that person, but he can't say anything this week, maybe next week. You are a human rain delay, man.
Verbal diarrhea, rain delay. I mean, they pretty much the same thing.
I think we could get some sponsors for the behind the scenes podcast.
Ooh. Yeah, podcasts are supposed to be the behind the scenes. This is really deep stuff.
This is like the Danny Saber and Roberto Luongo line up to get on the ice, and I got to go to the bathroom break type stories. That should be subscriber only, guys. Yeah,
it's dark web of goaltending. That's basically what it is. So you were up in Kelowna. You had Eric Comrie last week, James Reimer this week, the Net 360 group. Tell us about your experience.
Well, Kelowna was a little bit a mixture of work and pleasure. The work was obviously on the ice with, I guess for lack of a better term, the Net 360 group. Some of the goaltenders who head up there every August for the Net 360 camp decided to get together and get on the ice a little early, get their feet under them in July with Net 360 co-founders Ray Petkow of Alpha Sports Agency and Adam Francilia, who, as a trainer, goes back to like Andrew Ladd's junior days is when I first discovered A-Fran. And of course, Reimer was one of his early clients, and now he's got a stable, as does Ray, just loaded, not just goaltenders. Some of the shooters we had out there are guys that Adam Francilia works with, including Tyler Myers, now with the Vancouver Canucks. When we get to Net 360, it's just loaded with NHL shooters too, but certainly specializing in goaltending. And so we had Eric Comrie, James Reimer, who you hear from today, Cole Keeler in the Los Angeles Kings system, Beck Warm, who we saw at the mental training day with Pete Fry and John Stevenson. He was up there fresh off development camp with the Washington Capitals that evidently went well, so wouldn't be surprised to see Beck get a contract in the near future. And Troy Grosnick of the Nashville Predators / Milwaukee Admirals was out there as well. And one other mystery guest that I can't quite reveal just yet.
Will the other guys that we're familiar with Net 360, Dubnyk, right?
Yep.
Connor Hellebuck, do they do a camp later on? because of their preferences?
Well, those guys, including Laurent Brossois as well, will all be there at the Net 360 camp in early August, but not everybody came out to this one. Obviously for varying reasons, just in terms of travel. Devin Dubnik is not actually living in Kelowna this summer. He stayed in Minnesota with his, now young family with 3 young kids. They stayed there for the summer, but he'll still be at Net 360 in early August. I should mention too, the coaches, Ryan Sear flew in from Winnipeg for the 3 days on the ice. He usually sort of coordinates and runs all the coaches at the Net 360 camp. And first appearance this year at the other end of the ice, both of them, picked the half of the ice to run their drills, and then Adam Francilli in the middle with 2 goaltenders. So it was like a rotation among the 3. Was Eli Wilson. So he had one end of the ice, Ryan Sear at one end of the ice, and A-Fran in the middle. And to me, sometimes, to be honest, guys, the A-Fran stuff is the most fascinating because it really is. You talked about the off-ice work that James did before the interview. Well, the on-ice is almost like off-ice as well. I mean, they're strapped into bands. There's no pucks. There's no saves. It's a lot of movement patterns, single leg, both leg. Actually looks like goaltending. Some of it doesn't look like goaltending, but it's always and all very tied into goalie movement patterns and strengthening certain things. We've seen with the bands connected to guys, and depending on where the band is connected and what you're holding, you could be targeting abductors or you could be targeting obliques, like the muscles that we want to use to move in one piece to avoid a lot of the counter rotation and flailing that used to plague goaltending. So fascinating to be part of that for 3 days. And then I did manage to squeeze in, I got to plug it, charity golf tournament. Bob the Moj Marjanovic from TSN 1040 Radio in Vancouver puts it on every year. It's called the Moj Shootout. This year, they're raising money for BC Women's Hospital and Health Center, and they raised a ton of money. Lots of NHL players and ex-NHL players playing in the group up at the Harvest, and I was a guest of Ritchie Brothers. So my buddy Doug Olive from Ritchie Brothers invited us up there, and interspersed with 3 days of goaltending was one afternoon of excessive drinking and really poor golf.
James Reimer hints that maybe that group at Net 360 should go together and get A-Fran a hobby, so he doesn't just sit around thinking about evil drills and evil workouts to do. Eli Wilson, our good buddy, is also very busy doing his own camps. And Hutch, you're going to be part of that?
Yeah, I've been, we have been working with Eli for close to a decade now, and I even a little bit more closely. So Maddie and I are hitting the road tomorrow morning, heading to Edmonton. We'll spend a couple of weeks with Eli at his prospects camps. This is sort of the highest level camp he has for kids who play midget AAA, junior, sort of guys on the road to a pro career. And he's got a couple of WHL shooters at every station, and really, really the best of the best high level stuff. And we get to be a part of that to a little bit of coaching, a little bit of media work, and then obviously Maddie gets to come along for the ride as well and get a lot of reps in. So really, really great experience for both of us for a couple of weeks. And while we're there, we've already booked a time to go and see Jackie Freeman, John Stevenson's former partner in the business, and she's focused on the visual side of the game, the cognitive side of the game. I've had a fascinating chat with her leading up to that about the work that she has been doing with some of the goaltenders. She's also been involved in the work with Holtby and Hart and so on, and really fascinating stuff. So hopefully we'll bring some of that to everybody in a future podcast, and a couple of mystery guests that we're trying to nail down while we're in the Edmonton area as well. So stay tuned for that.
So you've been through this prospect camp a couple of times?
Oh, probably 5 or 6. Yeah.
Okay. So give me an idea of what Eli does with these goaltenders and what they work on. Is it just straight like from the ground up, or is it a little more specific?
It's his big focus. The phrase he likes to use is learn to play the game, not just the position. So you're given some really high level game-like scenarios. Every shooter, you go to a lot of goalie camps and you see the shooters in tracksuits and helmet and gloves. Every shooter here who plays in the Canadian Hockey League are in full gear, and Eli is pushing these guys to give nothing but 100% every rep. So you're really facing the best of the best at full speed, which is a little bit of a rare thing in the summertime with some of these camps. And so you're learning how to read complex situations. Each drill is built on the previous one so that as skills develop, new challenges are added in similar scenarios. He works with the shooters as well, asking them to execute certain things to try and deceive the goaltenders, to add a little bit of layer of deception that is becoming important in the game. And I think the shooters enjoy that as well, because they take something away from it, not just working on having a harder shot, a more accurate shot. It's impressive to see the work these guys do. I mean, at the end of the week, honestly, within the first day, quite often 2 days, these shooters have blown through a pair of gloves. They're all wearing baseball gloves, gardening gloves underneath, because they are working so hard. They're putting in 6 hours a day at full speed for 5 days, these shooters. Really impressive. And the goaltenders just sort of get tested at their limit. And then it's a whole program. They try and have that NHL training camp feel. So we've got a professional trainer on staff. There's a yoga instructor on staff. There's off-ice training. Kids are all staying in a hotel, 2 to a room. You're not just sort of showing up at the rink to do some drills. You're actually living the game for a week. It's a really cool atmosphere to try and raise your game and raise the level of play.
You know what I didn't hear in all of that, Woody? You know what I didn't hear?
What's that?
I didn't hear him say golf or beer.
Wednesday afternoon, we're probably at the golf course. Matty packed his clubs already. Probably not beer. Maddie's 12. He's not going to have a beer. I might in the evening. But no, there's a little time for fun as well. Hit up the West Edmonton Mall and the water park too, I'm sure.
We should probably actually clarify now that you say that, Darren, but the beer and the charity golf in terms of the excessive drinking. Now, because Eric Comrie was on with us, and that was after he played golf with myself and Cole Keeler, but there was no drinking with that. When I talk about the charity component and the NHLers that were out there, that's not these goalies. They were up there to work. They definitely did not take part in our one-day golf gong show. So when I golfed with Comrie and those guys, that was totally separate from the other thing. I will vouch for Hutch on the shooters. I'm just frantically looking because I've cramped on his name, but one of our shooters at the 3 days that we were up there, and he's been at Net 360 before too. He's a San Jose Sharks prospect, and he ended up in Eli's station on the last day on Wednesday, and he showed me the blister on his hand at the end of that session, and it was disgusting, and it was deep, and he was like, man, my hands are just raw.
I don't feel sorry for them. No. Yeah. Not in the slightest.
It's funny on Friday afternoon as the whistle goes to pick up the pucks after the last session. Quite honestly, the shooters all look relieved and they're high-fiving each other like they've just summited Mount Everest.
Look forward to the full report from you, Hutch, on your time in the Alberta capital. A side note, by the way, on the feature interviews from the last couple of weeks. When compared to Eric Comrie from a week ago, James Reimer helps further illustrate that there isn't one tried and true route to make it to the National Hockey League. Remember, Comrie was this big city guy from an affluent family, splitting his childhood between Edmonton and Southern California. That in itself is unique. James Reimer grew up in small-town Manitoba. You'll hear just how sparse in just a moment. He started playing hockey 5 years after most kids take up the game, making it to the Western Hockey League after a handful of seasons. Reimer will call Raleigh, North Carolina home this season, part of a change over with Sergei Bobrovsky taking over with the Florida Panthers. And interesting, listen to how many times the number 99 comes up for different reasons in this interview. Here's James Reimer with Kevin Woodley on InGoal Radio, the podcast presented by thehockeyshop.com.
All right, so pardon the background noise here, but we're with James Reimer now of the Carolina Hurricanes. We're inside the CNC Capital News Center in Kelowna. These guys just did like an hour bagger on the ice, 6:30 to 7:30, and now some off ice. So again, apologies to our listeners for the background noise, but we got some kid camps going as me and James catch up. First off, I want to start with like where you at this summer? After getting traded from Florida to Carolina, have you had a chance to wrap your mind around that? And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, currently not too good. I'm too old for a 6:30 workout. No, I mean, obviously excited. I mean, obviously, I knew there would be a little bit of uncertainty this off season and figuring out where I'd end up and whatnot. But to be picked up by Carolina, I'm pretty excited. Talked to a few people there and whatnot, and it seems like the team's in a great place, and I'm just excited to be a part of it.
The only problem I think I have with this deal is I've gotten to know you. I've had the pleasure of getting to know you off the ice. And I'm not sure you can wear the label as one of the bunch of jerks because you might be one of the nicest goalies in the NHL. How's that going to work?
Yeah, I'll just change my personality. That's not too hard to do. So
you're not going to be a jerk from now on?
Yeah. My true self will come out.
Let's talk about off ice in summer. Like, is this routine for you to be on this early? This week was your first time on the ice. Have I got that right in terms of summer? Would that be roughly your normal routine is back in mid-July, mostly off ice until then?
Yeah, it kind of changes from summer to summer. You kind of feel it out. In the past, I've been on this early a few times over my career, but sometimes you don't start till August. It just kind of depends what what the plan is for the summer and what you're working on and whatnot. And so this year, just really wanted to get your on ice movement down and just on ice strength. And so, to have a week like this where we're on the ice for a bunch of days, it's great to just try to kind of get your body going.
Now, Adam Francilia, talk a little bit. We've asked you in the past about this, but your work with him, we watched some of these drills. It's not, you're not upstairs in the gym, pushing big blocks of weight around, a lot of body movement stuff, a lot of smaller weights, a lot of things that are tied specifically to goaltending. How has working with him changed your off season and your approach to off ice training over the past few years? Well, I guess, and actually for it's not past few years, like you go way back, you go way back with A-Fran. Walk me through that relationship and the history of it. Because you might be one of his early NHL clients.
Yeah, one of his earliest. Lad, I think, was working with him before me and a few other guys. But yeah, I think this is I think we're starting our 10th year together. And so it's been fun. What I like about him too is he obviously loves the game and he loves the sport and specifically goaltending. And so, he's always, dreaming at night, thinking up, weird exercises for us that are super applicable to our position. And so, you're not just getting under the bar and squatting and deadlifting 1,000 pounds. We're doing a ton of just different mobility, movement stuff, just really controlling your body and kind of being a master of your body. And so, I just think it mirrors our game on the ice so much and definitely wouldn't be where I was if, it wasn't for, our relationship.
Okay. Now I want to go back. We got the up-to-date stuff and what you're doing. Like James Reimer fell in love with the position or became a goaltender because
I had an older brother that forced me in net.
We talked to Eric Comrie last week, same situation. His older brothers just happen to be a lot older and play in the NHL. But you know what? I think it was Alex Pruitt from Sports Illustrated did a story on this. And like half the guys in the league started with an older brother that shoved them in the net. So was that was it road hockey? Was it ice hockey? Walk me through that first experience. And how much older is your brother?
Yeah, so my brother, his name's Mark, and he's about 3.5 years older than me. And yeah, obviously every younger brother wants to play with their older brother. I'm pretty sure that's human nature for everyone. But obviously I enjoyed playing goalie, but yeah, no, he shoved me in net, and we would play road hockey, street hockey, floor hockey, kitchen hockey, everything, and so honestly, some of my favorite memories are we'd be watching. We were out in rural Manitoba, right? Only had 2 channels, but so when Hockey Night in Canada came on, it was a big night. And, so we'd watch hockey and in the intermissions, we'd be straight either to the basement or to my dad had a shop and we'd play for 20, 30 minutes, come back, watch another period, go back out. And so, just a lot of fun playing road hockey and with him being 3.5 years older than me, obviously, he's stronger and motor skills are better. It pushed you as a young kid too to try and keep up. And so, we kind of joke about it, but it definitely helped my development, I'm sure. Now,
did you play out at all or was based on that, were you just a goalie from day one? And I got to ask too, part 2 of this is, as you're out there, road hockey, street hockey, kitchen hockey, growing up in rural Manitoba, Morweena, if I'm pronouncing that
That's
correct.
right. Good job.
Who were you? Like were you James Reimer out there making saves? Were you Felix Pot? Like who were you?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of rotated a little bit. I mean, Mike Richter was my favorite goalie till I was about 11, 12-ish or so. And then I kind of started to understand the game a little more. And I was 99. And so that's when Eddie Belfour won the cup. And he's from Manitoba as well, coincidentally. And so he was my favorite goalie growing up through, the big years of understanding the game. But yeah, no, I mean, we just got after it. I mean, it was just a ton of fun.
At what point, population what? Like how small a town are we talking here, James?
About, it's called Sunday morning church service, about 150.
So how far is the NHL from there as a young kid growing up? Like at what point, when you end up going to play for the Red Deer Rebels in the WHL in 2005, but at what point as a young goaltender as you're developing, are you thinking that hockey goaltending could be a career for you, or the NHL was even remotely possible, let alone realistic?
I mean, it's so far away that it's not even on the radar. I mean, obviously you look at the yearbooks, like when I grew up, I want to be a hockey player, but like, I had no idea, you know what I mean? I was completely ignorant. And I think that probably helped too. Obviously I wanted to be a hockey player and you dreamt of it, but you had no idea what it took and even if it would be a possibility or whatnot. And so, and for me, I started late. I started playing when I was 12 and everything was just honestly, it was just 1 year at a time. And it's not even that I had that mentality or planned to have that mentality. It was just, 12 years old, let's try hockey. Oh, went well. 13, tried again, went well. You know what I mean? And so it just kind of kept building and I think when I thought realistically it could be a possibility, I mean, obviously when I got drafted into the NHL, I mean, that's kind of when I was like, oh, geez, like maybe this could happen, and so, but it was very much just an ignorance is bliss, probably kind of a childhood.
Okay, so you're drafted in 2006, 99th overall, the old number 99, not a bad digit
Top 100,
in hockey terms.
top 100.
Yeah, there we go. By the Toronto Maple Leafs, so you're coming off your first year in Red Deer. I always ask guys, like it's interesting now because we see these kids with goalie coaches at age 7 and 8. But if I remember an old conversation correctly, your first goalie coach was probably when you got to the Western Hockey League. And in some ways, it might have been your goalie partner.
Yeah. I mean, my goalie partner in junior is probably the most technical goalie I've ever played with, at least for my last 2 years. Morgan Clark, he
son of Vancouver Canucks goalie coach Ian Clark.
Yeah, he could move like no one I've ever seen, and so probably learned more from him than anybody else. But like I had the odd goalie coach, odd session here or there. I was 14, 15. Went to an HMI camp actually, then kind of learned like how to stand, like your stance, and just like the super basics. But really, didn't have a goalie coach at all. And so when I went to junior, then that's when I really kind of first had. My first goalie coach, Andy Nowicki, and he was great, but it was just, it was intriguing just to do goalie drills and to just, work on your game and see the differences and kind of how goaltending is really separate from the rest of the team, really.
Okay. So now 3 years in the dub, turned pro. Now you're in the Toronto organization. 08-09 split between Reading and the Marlies in the American Hockey League. Looks like some stints too with South Carolina. So a little ECHL, a little AHL.
Mm-hmm.
Was Frankie there already? Was Frankie in the organization at that point, or walk me through the progression there? Like how has your game evolved? Because I know you ended up with Allaire in Toronto, but I wasn't sure if he was there that early. But how's your game evolved as you turned pro, and what kind of things were you changing?
Yeah, I mean, my first year pro was kind of like almost my childhood. I'd never really heard of the ECHL before. You know what I mean? I kind of heard of the AHL a little bit. I mean, we had it in Winnipeg when the Jets left, but the East Coast I didn't really know anything about, and went up there and if Frankie wasn't part of the organization yet, he came in the next year, but had a really tough start to that year. The team wasn't very good. Probably I wasn't playing very good. First year pro, a lot of learning so it was different. And then I got traded to South Carolina, and South Carolina was a great team and fit in there, and we ended up actually winning the whole thing. So And obviously I had a few games with the Marlies as well, but turned out to be a really good finish to that year.
All right, so you win a championship in your first year, East Coast Hockey League. Then you move up to the Marlies, you get a little exposure to Frankie, and then ultimately with the Leafs from 2010 all the way through 2016. Talk to me a little bit about your time with Francois Allaire, a goalie coach who I've argued should probably be the first in the Hall of Fame or needs to be in the Hall of Fame. There's some other guys there too, but
yeah,
about time. Message to the Hockey Hall of Fame voters. Goalie coaches are people too.
Who knew?
But also a guy that I think there might be some misconceptions about. I mean, everybody just associates him with a very rigid style of goaltending. And yes, there was a system, but was there some misconceptions there?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, honestly, I credit Frankie for a massive part of my success in the NHL. I mean, like I said, I never really had goalie coaching per se, and had some in Red Deer, which is great because it gave me kind of the introduction to goaltending. But then, I was still really raw in the East Coast, and then I came up the next year and we started working with Frankie, and he just had a system. When the puck's here, this is kind of what you do. When the puck's here, this is what you do, and it just like blew my mind, and the game got just simplified it big time. And so that was huge for me, you know what I mean? Because the whole time it was just like, you're just kind of guessing or just kind of...
It's like putting a plan in place.
Yeah, there's no plan. You just try and stop the puck, right? And so for him, it was huge for my game.
What'd you learn about yourself playing in that market? It's not easy. I mean, I've only worked in a Canadian market from a journalism side, and I've seen what it's like. Not everybody handles it differently. What was that experience like?
Honestly, I have to give a lot of credit to their program, their development. I mean, I went to development camp, a bunch of times, and they had some really good information. And so, the biggest thing that I learned is take time after games or practice and take 30 seconds or 5 minutes, whatever you need, cool down and start thinking about what you're going to be asked. And your life will be so much easier. And so if there's one thing I tell to guys, especially after I left and some new guys coming in, it was just, like these guys, it's because it's all about the media and how hard it is and whatnot. And obviously these guys just have a job to do. And so if
we're not all evil.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so, it's just, if you can just take the emotion out of it and start formulating answers in your head before they come, then it'll make your life a lot easier.
So you just kind of like a deep breath, but you almost got to plan for it a little bit.
Yeah. Just put in just 30 seconds of planning. You know what I mean? Like, what went wrong on the ice? I mean, and so they're probably going to ask you about it. So do you want to snap at them and be a headline for a day, or do you want to just take a breath and just accept the fact that they're going to ask about it, and that's okay?
Knowledge of the position has changed too over the years from a media standpoint. Obviously, not everyone's having conversations like this where we want to get into technical details, but has that helped, or like they look for more explanations beyond just how the puck went in? Like, are you finding that as the questions become a little more educated, is it easier, or am I overstating how educated the questions are?
No, I think that helps. I mean, when you're talking to someone who studies the game and really invests into the game, it becomes a lot easier, A, to give a good answer, and B, to actually not just more dialed into it, you know what I mean, or more professional or whatever, you know what I mean? If you feel like a guy's just kind of there and asking questions because he has to, I mean, it's a lot harder to be a pro and try and give a good answer.
Okay, now, how's your game changed as well since Toronto and over the past couple of years? Like, it feels like this is a position that's constantly evolving. Like, it's always changing. If you stand still, you might be falling behind, but it also can be tough because sometimes people chase the latest thing. How do you get to the point where that this is my foundation as James Reimer and I'm comfortable in it? Like, do you have to be careful not to try too much, or where is that for you now?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just kind of have to read where you're at and where the game's at. I mean, I feel pretty comfortable where I am, and obviously done some great work with Head Trajectory and Lyle and whatnot, and feel like that was a huge boost in my game.
In what ways? In what ways did it change? Because we've actually never had this conversation. I've recorded you working with him, but I've never asked you what about it worked and how you think it helped you.
I find that, like, for me, the way I see it is when I worked with Frankie, it simplified the game big time, and it just made the game easier. You had a plan, and I feel like head trajectory or tracking, whatever the cool word is these days, it just, in working with live, it just did it like twofold. It just like, so I had that, and now the next step was an even better or a more detailed plan. You know what I mean? It was just taking that next step. And so it just simplified the game even more. And so, that for me was big, because it's, if anything, my game was a little too busy. And so now it's just kind of adds a little bit more of a calm side to it.
Okay, now a lot of people think of tracking and we think of watching the puck off the release. The one thing to me that I think outside having learned it, like, it really is more, like, it's more than just the shot. Mm-hmm. It's the movement and the biomechanics and the setup and all those elements. Do you think it gets a misconception as just being about, because when we think of puck tracking, it's like, yeah, that's the puck coming at me, the shot. In some ways, I think it actually is more about the other things that get you to the position before the shot comes.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's what it is. I mean, if you're not set up properly to look at the puck when it's coming at you, it's going to be way harder to look at the puck, right? And so, I mean, if you do the work beforehand, it's crazy. I even find for myself when in practice sometimes when you're lagging a little bit and feels like pucks are coming at you pretty quick, it's often it's the lead up. It's not the release. It's like, are you tracking it to the guy's stick? You know what I mean? That extra second or two with having your eye on it, it's a big deal.
And building all those elements early. Florida, San Jose, brief stint, little chance with Johan Hedberg, and you guys went on a run to the conference finals with Martin Jones. That was your first time traded in the NHL. What was that like as an adjustment? And has that made it easier to go from then to Florida the next year? And do you think it'll make it easier now? You've been through it a few times, going to Carolina this summer and into next year.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, going to San Jose, I mean, it was super exciting. I mean, you didn't know what was going to happen that year, and obviously it was a big turnover in Toronto and whatnot. They were really working on a few things, and so. But obviously, we weren't making the playoffs by any shot in Toronto, and to go to a team like San Jose, where obviously they were a contender, and I learned a ton that those 3 months. I mean, just the level of leadership and commitment and work ethic that they had. You know what I mean? It was something to really to see firsthand. Like it's.
Were there guys that surprised, like that you saw it from, that surprised you based on how long they'd been in the league? Was it them still doing those types of things?
And just the way they could control how they played, but also their emotions and how they prepared. Like San Jose, obviously with Jumbo and Burns and those guys, like I like to have a ton of fun. They like to goof off, and it was really cool to see, because they would have their fun before the game. They'd be loose, and then all of a sudden, like at a certain time before the game, it was just like boom. Game mode, like jokes are over, where we're doing this. You know what I mean? And it was just cool to see that they didn't take the game too seriously, but when it was time to play, it was time to play.
Can you take anything out of that as a goaltender? Like, do you have a routine where you start certain things at certain times to be ready to play a game, or can seeing guys in player positions switch a focus, can that have a benefit for you as a goalie too, or just seeing it's possible, or seeing that attention? How do you soak that in and actually make it apply to you?
I think so, because I mean, you're always trying to fine tune your game, right? And I think there's some common practices and common things that all athletes do. Not even just different positions in your own sport. And so to see guys like that, it starts to make you think about your game. It's like, well, could I loosen up a little bit more game? Like, would that actually make me a better player? You've had that thought a bunch of times, obviously, or you've had it mentioned to you or whatnot. And then you see these guys having success, and it's like, okay, this is a viable option. You know what I mean? And maybe you start to tweak it a little bit. And
okay, so 3 years in Florida after Toronto, and I promise we're going to wrap up here because I know I'm getting you in trouble at home. April's going to just blame it on us.
yeah, for sure. I always do. Don't worry.
Playing with Roberto Luongo. As much as the plan was to go there and play probably more, Roberto's a competitive guy that doesn't give up the net very easily. What'd you learn from him, if anything?
Absolutely nothing. No, the thing I learned from Lou, I mean, obviously Lou's a great guy, and it sucks to see, honestly sucks that he's done. I mean, when he told me, honestly, like my heart sank. I mean, I know how much of a competitor he is and how much he loves the game and stuff. And so, and for the game to lose, a personality like that, and also just, his level of excellence his entire career. I mean, it sucks for the game. But what I learned from him is just work ethic. I mean, every single day he came in and he'd go about his thing and do his warm up and
it was exhaustive by the end.
And it was exhausting, right? I was tired watching him, and he'd get on the ice and he just works. He just works. You know what I mean? There's no up and down to his game. You know what I mean? There's one day he'd work harder than the next. It was just he'd get on the ice and he would just be good every day. He would just bring the same level of a high level of work ethic. You know what I mean? It was just like it was Groundhog Day every day, and and that's the way he played. I mean, he rarely had bad games. He just played the same way, and so it was pretty impressive to see. Just his just how steady he was.
Tough year last year for everyone, I think. Like, I don't know, a lot of people look at numbers, and I think when you look at the Panthers' numbers, all the goalies kind of wasn't a good year for anyone. And usually, like I had a lot of people ask me about Bishop and Hudobin. I had a lot of people ask me about Greiser, who's at the camps with us in the summer, and Laner. And usually on that end, when the numbers are good for both guys, we look at it and we say, well, yeah, I mean, listen, goaltending doesn't exist in a vacuum. We are a function of what's going on in front of us. Last year, clearly, it was a tougher environment in Florida for goalies. When you see everybody's numbers across the board take a hit, that's probably a factor. You were behind that in Toronto, too, at times, where the structure wasn't great. How do you get through that as a goalie? When you feel like you're playing well, but maybe the numbers aren't there? Like, how do you judge yourself when you think maybe I feel like I'm playing better than what the results look like? How hard is that?
Yeah, I mean, when it's a tough situation and maybe you're not playing as well as you can, or as a team you're not playing as well as you can. I mean, it's tough. I mean, I think the good thing about that is, you're refined by fire, right? I mean, you learn to persevere and believe. And I think last year too, I think every goalie, except maybe a select few, really, had a hard time adjusting, because I think the game changed more last year than it's ever changed in the last 15 years.
In terms of what you guys were seeing, because of what's going on in front of you defensively, but just overall in terms of the league too?
I think just overall in the league, I think there's just way more young guys in the league, and to break it down. I mean, everyone always says, young guys, they can't play defense. It takes them a couple years to learn to play D. Everyone can play offense, but they can't play D. But now that the league's getting younger, it's just offense, and more risk, high risk, high reward type things, right? So
less. I mean, it's funny because defensive defensemen don't exist anymore. Braden Holtby last year told me, he's like, Carl Alzner was one of my favorite guys to play behind in Washington of all time.
Yeah,
and he's not in the league anymore.
Yeah,
and those guys aren't getting drafted anymore. And that means, as you said, there's a little less of that defensive style in front of the goaltenders. That is a tougher environment.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I found myself, start of the year, I'd maybe my normal depth or a touch more than I would normally have. And all of a sudden, by a month and a half in, I was like, I got to pull this way back, because it's just lateral play. And so, I think there was a big adjustment for some guys. And obviously there's a few teams who, the top teams that were, had really good systems in place that maybe there wasn't such a drastic push.
Mitigated some of those chances.
Yeah. But I mean, it was a difficult year, I think, for a lot of goalies. And I think it's just, perseverance, trust your game and trust your game, but have an understanding of have your eyes open to understand what's going on around you.
Don't just pass the buck, but
yeah, you gotta take your share of it, and you gotta fine tune where you need to fine tune. But I mean, just trust it. I mean, you're an NHL goalie, so just it's in there. Just find it.
Last one is you go to Carolina. How do you feel about your game? Like, through all these different evolutions, all these different voices that you've absorbed and added pieces from. How do you feel about things heading in there? How do you feel about your game right now at this stage of your career?
Pretty good. I mean, obviously last year was a great year for learning, and so usually when you learn a lot, then you apply it the next year. So, but I'm excited about this year, the things I've been doing off ice with AFRAN and just kind of my approach to the game and some more on ice stuff I'm going to be doing. I'm really looking forward to fine tuning things. I kind of took a step back and looked at my year last year and kind of saw some things that you need to keep the same and some things that I need to improve on and whatnot. And so I feel like I have a pretty good plan in place for this summer. So definitely looking forward to putting her in place in Carolina.
You set yourself up though on this one. I'm sorry, but when you look back at your year, are you just looking at video, James, or are you looking at statistics as well and looking for trends when you try and have that honest evaluation of what I feel good about and what I need to improve? Is that you with a goalie coach? Is that you on your own? Like, what's that process like? Because I think there's a lot of young goalies that would be fascinated to hear that.
No, for me, it's just all mental, really. I mean, it's nice to hear certain stats and get some hard information like that. But, mostly it's just me lying in bed, head on the pillow, just thinking about things.
Okay, so you're not doing a lot of video work. It's just more self-evaluation.
Yeah, I think it's more just self-evaluation. I've seen a bit of video too and whatnot, but for me, it's just like, how did you feel in the game? Like, what, I have a pretty good memory. I can replay the video in my head. And so, you know what I mean? I know how I felt in certain situations and I just, a couple of ideas popped in my head and you evaluate those ideas and then you pick a few that you think are top priority and you get after it.
Okay. So you replay the game in here. You're not Doobie though. You're not like, can you like Devin can actually recall every goal? I think you might be able to do most saves too. You're not quite to that level.
I don't know. I mean, I think as a goalie, you have a pretty good memory.
Okay. So next time, because you're way late, but next time we're going to play a little game. I'm doing this with Doobie later this summer. He says he can remember every goal.
Wow.
We might pull some, we could have some fun. We might pull some clips and see who's got the better memory.
Yeah,
James,
I'm sure it's him.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time today. I know I've kept you longer than I wanted to. But the conversation was so good. We really enjoyed it. And I know our listeners are going to too.
Beautiful. No, my pleasure. Thank you.
For about 10 minutes a couple of weeks ago when we interviewed Martin Brodeur, I felt bad about busting Woody about the 2 more questions thing. And then as I was walking back to my hotel in Vancouver at the draft, I thought to myself, no, it's true. He does it every time. and I was just proven correct once again, Woody.
Yeah, let's just say there were some sincere apologies issued to April Reimer on behalf of Kevin Woodley through James. I think Hutch actually may have bailed us out on that one. I told Reims just a reminder, because they're heading to Manitoba the day after, and he was supposed to be home early to back. And AFRAN had already kept him late. Me and him had chit-chatted before we started. And, he said, hey, I got this amount of time. And then we chit-chatted for half of it before we even hit record. So, I owe James an apology. I owe April and their 2 young daughters an apology for keeping Dad as long as I did. But like I said, Hutch, I did remind him to remind her that those beautiful pictures of James in his full gear on the ice and on the bench with April and Nevaeh, their firstborn, from last summer's Net 360 camp that you sent to me to forward to him, that I think they really appreciated. I think that might have bought us a little goodwill for keeping him late this podcast.
Yeah, you think he was happy about those? I sent them to him actually, but he was happy, was he?
Yes, he was. Yes, I think he was. So that might have bought us a little goodwill there. And as I said at the beginning, joked around about bunch of jerks and there's no way Reimer could fit in that. Like Reims is, I mean, he's always smiling, right? Like his attitude
that big smile, yeah,
absolutely. Such a good dude, such a funny guy. We get to see him off the ice in the workouts and joking around with the boy. He's one of the really good ones in the game, and hope he gets a good opportunity. I think he will in Carolina. I'm really curious to see the goalie coach hire they make there. I think it's going to be an important one for him. It would be nice if, I don't want to say as expected, but I have a hunch that maybe it might be Paul Schoenfelder, who just won a Calder Cup championship with the Carolina Hurricanes affiliate in Charlotte, just helped guide Alex Nedeljkovic to a Calder, not just a Calder Cup, but also a Goalie of the Year in the American Hockey League award. Made some changes, as I understand it, to Tokarski that really helped him be a part of that tandem that won them the championship. Be nice if he gets the promotion. Be nice if it works for him and his family, because they still live back in Ottawa. If they can make all that work, I think it would be good for James, because there are some elements in what Paul Schoenfelder teaches that I think would fit very well with James. Thing about Reims is he's such a nice guy, almost sometimes, I don't want to say to a fault, but like he always wants to please the person he's working with. And sometimes at the detriment maybe of his own game, in terms of trying everything and wanting to do what the person in front of him is telling, when maybe he isn't as sold on it being the answer as he is what he did to get to that place. So I think it'd be a nice fit if it was him, Paul moving up, maybe a guy like Freddie Brathwaite, who is also has some similar backgrounds in that mix as well in the Carolina goalie coach search. So yeah, they're a little insider tidbit, but also how I think it would fit very well with Reims if it goes down.
Do you think he took his own advice and took 5-10 minutes before coming out to talk to you to catch his breath and get prepared for some of the questions you were going to ask?
No, I got to be honest with you. The off-ice workout was scheduled to be outside around the corner in a field, and it poured rain that morning in Kelowna. And so it was moved indoors. So all the boys had to go out and haul all the weights and stuff into the indoor facility at Capital News Center. They have a really nice sort of indoor side-by-side indoor soccer fields, and that's where they train. So I think Reims was kind of lingering and hanging with me to avoid having to haul all that crap back up to A-France truck. So he used me in a different way.
Hutch had a great line about the number 99 synergy between Belfour winning a cup in 99 and being drafted 99th overall. Hutch?
Also the number of questions Kevin asks after saying just one more, please. Over and over. Hey, how many times do we find ourselves after one of these interviews saying, honestly, this guy's one of the really nice ones in the game? I mean, it almost feels like a cliche that all these guys we speak to are just really genuinely nice human beings. It's so
I'll
good.
say this. I think people don't take advantage of him. I don't think he's appreciated, though, for what he did. He stepped into a tough situation in Toronto, and I'm not going to tell you who told me, but it was a high person in management at the Maple Leafs who said he wasn't athletic and he wouldn't make it.
Wow.
And this was after he was drafted, and he burst onto the scene, took the number one job, and took them to a playoff, and in that epic series against the Boston Bruins, which they were up in Game 7. But this is a guy that's won 144 games in the National Hockey League, and through 2 main stops and one other one in San Jose. And I don't know whether people really appreciate how great of a story and a great of goaltender he is. He's not a star. I'm not going to go that far, but he's definitely better than what people will buy into.
And I think part of the problem in Florida too, guys, was, and he'll be the first one to admit it didn't always go well, but if you take a look at it, when Roberto was hurt, when Roberto was on IR and it was James's job, someone told me the save percentage was .921.
Wow.
The problem was when Roberto was there, the opportunities to play became sometimes, and they get behind and James wouldn't have a good game and the leash would be gone and they'd run Roberto. And frankly, if I'm honest, I think they ran him into the ground a few times, especially as he got older. And then when they needed to go back to James because they'd run Lou into the ground, Reims hadn't played in a couple of weeks. So it's not an excuse. He's not making it as an excuse. I think I said this to him too, like when all the goalies' numbers are bad, like last year, and for the record, his was the best of the 4 that played there last season. Usually that's not the goaltending.
No.
Because I've had so many people say, like Florida's only problem last year was its goaltending. I don't know how many articles I've read about Sergei Bobrovsky that start with Florida addressed its only problem last year, goaltending.
Ooh.
When all 4 guys, when Roberto Luongo, a career 920 guy, dips below 900, when all 4 guys play that far below their career averages, Michael Hutchison, remember, he was supposed to be the big signing as one of the best number 3 guys, should have been in the NHL. He was sub 900. Samuel Montembeault is going to be their backup this year, evidently. Got a lot of praise for stepping in and being ready for the NHL. I think he finished with an 894. When that happens, just as we look at the New York Islanders and Robin Lehner and Thomas Greiss and the Dallas Stars with Ben Bishop and Anton Hudobin having similarly great numbers, when everybody tanks, I'm telling you, it's usually not just the goaltending. It's the crap that's going on in front of them. And Florida will be better. Bob is an excellent goaltender, but a large part of it's going to be Quenneville cleaning up the crap that was going on in their own end. They were giving up lateral seam plays, broken plays. Like, that was a tough environment for goaltenders. My bet is that James Reimer has a really big bounce back season, and I'm not just saying that because I think he's a really nice guy.
Platoon situation in Carolina?
Yeah, the thing I think James can give you, if you give him an opportunity to play regularly, I could see him pushing Peter Mrazek, whose consistency at times has been an issue.
The one question about numbers, and we get into numbers because of the position with the save percentage and the average and wins, is what number is James Reimer going to wear? Because Mrazek is 34 and James has worn 34 forever.
Would have been a great question.
Yeah, it would have been, but that would have been number 100. And he wasn't going to go to triple digits.
That. And
I actually did reach out to Carolina, and they they've broached that subject with James, but they have not heard back about what number he's going to wear.
Woody, you should text him and say one more.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, I know I kept you to the point where you almost missed your trip to Manitoba to visit family, but let me just interrupt it with an inane question about your number.
Okay, I'm voting for 43.
It's actually a good question. I'm kicking myself that I didn't ask it, but I can guarantee you this: we will be the first ones to ask it because we see him as soon as he gets back from Manitoba up at Net 360 camp in Kelowna.
How about the fact that he didn't start playing hockey until he was 12?
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
Got me today.
Yep. Starts at 12 and he's in the WHL as a 17-year-old.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah. And from a town that small.
Don't tell me he's on athletic leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, that was one person's opinion, but it struck me as really, really shocking when that person told me that. But 12 years old, I mean, and didn't have a goalie coach until he was didn't have a full-time goalie coach until he was in the American Hockey League, right?
No, and he did have Andy Nowicki in Red Deer, but it was funny because that was at a time when sort of modern technical goalie coaching was just sort of coming of age, and we've joked about this in the past. He says his first really technical goalie coach was, and he said it in the interview, was Morgan Clark, who of course is Ian Clark's kid. So we've shared that story before, but it was funny to get to share it with the listeners again.
He uses the Bauer line of equipment, which is part of our gear segment.
He has a Bauer 2X Pro stick, but it actually isn't a 2X Pro stick. It's an NXG skin, but we are going to talk about the 2X Pro stick for reals this week, which Eric Comrie was using at the camp in Kelowna last week. And to talk about it, we're going to go to the Hockey Shop, Source for Sports in Surrey. That's where I go for all my gear needs over the years. They're in my backyard, and that makes me a lucky guy because they're the best at what they do, whether it's their world-famous skate sharpening or expert advice on anything goal. They carry all the best brands, have a huge selection. This is basically, you've heard me say it before, this is like a little slice of goalie heaven. Unfortunately, not everybody is as lucky as me. Not everybody gets to go there in person and have conversations with Cam or this week, Jonathan Holloway. Not everyone gets to go there. There's good news, though, especially if you're on the other side of the border. You can go to thehockeyshop.com and your US dollars go a lot further because of the exchange rates taking a little dip in the past week. I get paid in US funds. That sucks, but it's still around 30, 31. The $1.31 Canadian you'll get for a US dollar, and that means your US dollar will go that much further at thehockeyshop.com. So if you're shopping from the States, make sure you check them out. The prices are even cheaper. And yes, with the exception of CCM and Bauer, everything else gets shipped cross-border. Make sure you check them out at thehockeyshop.com.
The stick's the subject of the gear segment, and the trip to Source for Sports Surrey is back on as Woody has a new partner, teaming up with Jono.
Welcome back to the Hockey Shop, Source for Sports in Surrey, British Columbia, and also can be found at thehockeyshop.com. I'm down in the basement again. Little slice of goalie heaven. We're actually in the back room today. It's busy out front. Too many goalies checking out all this amazing gear. So we slipped into the back room, but not with Cam. We have a special guest today because Cam got married. evidently this is now like, I don't know, against the rules or something. He's too busy. Like, guy gets married and now he's ditching us. We'll have to figure this out. Maybe he'll be back. Maybe he won't. Big timed us. We got Jonathan Holloway here instead. One of the staffers down here in the goalie department. And I always tell you, our listeners, when we talk to Cam, I always talk about how when you come to the goalie department here, you end up talking to goalies. This isn't like a store where it's just some random 16-year-old high school kid trying to sell you goalie gear. You guys play the position. You understand the position. You have passion for the position. So Jonathan Holloway last year played with the White Rock Whalers, Junior B, looking to move up to Junior A this year. This guy gets it. So Jonathan, first of all, thank you for coming on the podcast with us.
Thanks for having me.
And we're going to talk a little Bauer 2X Pro and the Bauer 2X stick line. Let's start at the top because that's how we like to do it around here. Let's start with the Bauer 2X Pro stick. Just walk me through the basics of what they're trying to achieve here. And there are some big differences in the 2X from the 1X. Some big changes. They went away from the balsa that was inside the 1X. What's the feel? What's the idea? What do they got going on here? And what's the feedback early on?
So the first thing you'll notice when you pick up the stick is it's really light. That was the big selling point, and that's what they wanted out of the stick this time, was to mimic that foam core feeling while still having a light stick this time around, because people picked up the 1X and just found it a bit too heavy and usually opted for maybe a 2S or something like that.
Right, and so the 1X had the balsa core that they used, again, that was their attempt to get that foam core feel. They're the first company to go. Bauer, if you don't know, is actually the first company, our listeners don't know, you would, of course, the first company to go completely away from foam core. They don't make a foam core stick. They're all in on composite. They've been ahead of the game on composite for a while. The attempt was a foam core feel in the 1X. They used the balsa, got the feel.
But they also got the weight.
So now this time, flash forward to this year, and they've used what they call aero foam core blade technology. So again, they've gone to it more of a different sort of layering of the composite and the way they insert the form. And the idea here is to make it feel like a foam core stick. And, I mean, they've had success at the NHL level. Henrik Lundqvist, who for years wouldn't change out of a foam core product, is now using a genuine Bauer 2X Pro stick. It's not skinned. It really is a 2X Pro. That was a big switch for them. Linus Hallmark was the other guy who went all in. So, sometimes you take with a grain of salt things that happen in pro, but in this case, a guy like Henrik, who is set in his ways, we've all seen his glove, pancake flat and doesn't close, set in his ways, and for him to feel comfortable about the feel of this stick and its comparability to foam core is probably a pretty big step. What's been the feedback at retail?
Well, Lundqvist says a lot, like, when he goes for that, but even at retail, we're seeing a lot more guys willing to try it. A lot more guys actually switching from other things or switching from a foam core wood to it. And it's been genuinely good feedback for it. Everybody seems to be really happy with the lightness and the ability to get that foam core feel while still having a light stick that they can use.
Okay, so we talked about the aeroform. The other thing is the advanced carbon layering. So this is just a couple of terms. ACL, I think of my knee. They think of the way they layer their carbon to make it work. At the end of the day, we'll be testing it at InGoal as well. We've got it on the ice. Actually, just in the past couple of weeks, we've gotten it on the ice. Early response was that, it did feel, it's one thing in stick handling. I mean, composite's always going to have the puck's going to jump off the blade a little more. It's going to be a little different. That's an easy adjustment, I think, for any goalie. It's about the feel of steering pucks into the corner. And we had some video and we had some guys out in it recently. And, is it foam core identical? No, but they really liked it in terms of the similarities to a foam core. Again, for,
The
puck
vibration,
on sticks. Yeah, the vibration,
like
the way it feels in your hand. So it's, so that's a pretty big step. So let's move down the line because there are different price points. This one retails in Canada, $299. And what's the next one? It's the X2.9 is the next model down. What changes from 2X Pro to X2.9 other than price point? And that one's $179 at retail.
Yes, so the X2.9 still stays relatively similar to the 2X. With that being said, you don't get the aerofoam blade, you get an Enega blade, which is an upgrade for that price point in Bauer, but a downgrade
not
from
quite
the
the
Pro.
same.
Yes.
Okay, so this one's going to feel more like a composite stick traditionally has. Again, better price point. But if you really want that foam core feel, that's the 2X Pro. X 2.9 is not going to have that aero foam technology in it.
Exactly.
Okay, and next one down, lastly, but certainly not least, the X 2.5 $99 stick. I'm thinking this is, what's the target audience for this one?
It's an entry model stick. It's something that people that don't want to go to that high price point or just playing once a week or twice a week want. That's what it's built for, and it mimics somewhat of a Prodigy with the way that the shoulder's taped, so you don't have to tape there. It gives you that added grip without it being actually on the stick.
I kind of like that. I mean, obviously we all like to tape our own sticks, but it basically has a grip as Jonathan said, sort of just right above the shoulder on the handle where you're going to grab the stick. It actually has a nice soft, almost feels like a golf grip actually, with tape on both ends.
Exactly.
Built into it for a $99 stick. Not bad at all.
It's comfortable to hold and it plays pretty well as well.
Okay. Now, 2X Pro on sale. If you're willing to handle the weight of the 1X Pro, this is where the sales usually come on, because 2X Pro has hit the shelves, so 1X Pro is on sale. I notice you guys have some left. How far down is that marked right now?
So that's marked down from the original $289 price to $231.99.
Okay, and you still got a few left out there, so some different patterns and options and colors if people want to check it out at thehockeyshop.com. And what was it about this stick? Because I know you had some guys in-house here. Like I said, all the guys in the hockey shop, goalie department, play the position, passionate about the position. And there were some guys that were passionate about this stick. Was it just willing to have a little bit more weight, still lighter than a foam core, but a little more weight, say, compared to a 2X Pro to get that feel?
Yes, that in the short, that's what it was. Some of the guys actually didn't mind the weight at all because it did mimic that core or foam core feeling while still giving you the benefits of a composite stick. So they didn't mind the weight whatsoever. The balsa core really did help mimic the foam core feel, but when it came to actual customers, people wanted something light.
They want the lightweight. Yeah, no, absolutely. So if you're one of those people that did like the balsa and you were willing to have it be a little heavier, if you're old school, you like a heavy feel. Hey, I got guys that I know that still like to play with like wood. I just shake my head.
We still see people too.
Exactly. So some guys like heavier sticks. If you're one of those, it's not like it's excessively heavy. It's just in comparison to the 2X Pro. That 1X Pro is on sale. Check it out at thehockeyshop.com for the sale price. Like I said, they still have a fairly good selection of it. And if you want the super lightweight new 2X Pro with aerofoam core blade technology, again, super lightweight stick, more of the feel of foam core. They've got a full selection of that in multiple colors, and we've talked about it on the customizer as well. You can order those in custom and get colors, name, and different shapes on the paddle. You only need to order one stick. That's a pretty big step for them.
That's really nice. I mean, you don't have to commit to 3, then you can get the one stick, and yeah, it's just a better price point.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Hey, Jonathan, thank you very much. I think you kind of killed it here, even though I had verbal diarrhea and talked all day. You did a great job. Cam, if you're listening, buddy, you might be in trouble.
He did a good job. Jono I think we might have a star in the making here.
Yes, and a star fading in Cam. I mean,
he got married. He didn't pass away.
Well, I mean, now he's married. He's got all these responsibilities. This is what happens. It's like Reimer. He gets a little older. He's got kids. The young goalies are nipping at his heels for playing time. This is what's happening to Cam. First, he gets married. Now all of a sudden the young buck comes in, delivers a strong performance in his InGoal Radio Podcast debut. I'm back at the shop this week. Congratulations to Cam on the wedding, but he's actually back at work. I think they're going to push the honeymoon will be a little later, so he's actually going to get back to the grind, which means he has to answer a few of my questions this week. I'm going to give him another shot, but I'm not saying, but there's a little bit of pressure on, I think, right now.
Well, that's 2 weeks in a row we haven't heard from Cam, and sort of reminds us, I saw an old interview this week on YouTube with Johnny Bauer, Glenn Hall, and Jacques Plante, and they were referencing Glenn Hall's 502 consecutive games started, and he said, I didn't want to give up the net because some young guy might come in and keep it. So there you go, Cam. Glenn Hall moment.
Jonathan Holloway, a.k.a. Jono, to those in the shop. And, I mentioned it in the interview, just another reason I go there. you hear the level of expertise, right? These guys use it. We were talking about the 2X Pro stick, and the one thing we didn't really get to in there about the stick itself is just the actual weight difference compared to the 1X, the generation before it, which had the balsa wood in it. And the 1X Pro was 795 grams, and this new 2X Pro is 665 grams. So it is a significant weight difference by taking out that balsa wood that they had in the 1X Pro. So there's the specifics on that. But it was interesting being in there because one of the guys really liked the 1X Pro, and so he felt the feel was good on the 2X Pro, but he actually wanted the extra weight. So there are, there's always, everybody has so many different preferences that little bit of heaviness can kind of feel more traditional to an old school guy. And, but that's why you go in there. That's why you go in, because these guys play it, like I said it many times. They all play it at a really high level. They're all passionate about it. Guys like Jonathan Holloway, playing Junior B, looking to move up to Junior A. And he doesn't just get the gear he plays with. They're always talking about each other's gear and what they like and what they don't like and what they think works and what works best. And so when you go in there and you have those conversations, it's like you're getting real genuine advice from guys who really understand it.
Can I ask a stupid question?
There are no stupid questions, only stupid answers. And that's what I'm here for.
Can you tell me, other than weight, like don't go weight, but what's the difference between foam core and composite? When with somebody like Henrik Lundqvist didn't want to switch for the longest time.
Well, and he did, as we said,
yeah,
it's feel. So I mean,
just feel. Yeah,
because the foam core ultimately, the outer surface is like old traditional wood, like it's soft, right?
Yeah,
and it breaks down. It's funny. A lot of people talk about stick breakage as an issue with composite because it's a more expensive product. But the reality is, unless you have an actual failure, a breakage, I find the composite lasts longer because it doesn't soften up like the old wood foam core would, where it would just eventually chip away. But in addition to the weight, it's just the feel. Like there's a softness to a wood outer layer that you can't really fully replicate. They come close in terms of the feel, getting rid of the vibe. When remember when composite first came out, Hutch, like the original sticks, there's a lot of
Warrior.
They felt tinny. Oh, the Warrior didn't. Mm-hmm. They did a nice job with the handle there, but
I'd say that was the first change.
Yeah. The Ritual did it. Was the first one to sort of introduce it was a specific rubber designed to take away a specific wavelength that the hand felt, like actually dampen that wavelength before it got to your hand by having it up around the paddle. And to me, the feel used to be composite felt stiff and tinny, and you didn't have any of that feel. It felt hard. They've overcome that. They've come so far with that. It doesn't feel like that anymore. But the one thing you can't really change to me is, and to me, it's not worth it anymore. I don't know. I'm old and weak, and I go back to a foam core right now, and it would feel like it weighed a ton. But that's a level of softness on the blade that it's pretty hard to imitate.
It is, and I would say our experience here looking at the 2X and the 2S stick, I think the 2S is a great stick, and in your hand you probably don't even realize it, but then you grab the 2X and there is a bit more softness to it. There is a bit more feel to it. It's a bit traditional. It's I couldn't say if it's at the level of foam core because I haven't tested one side by side in a long time. But you can see the difference and why a guy like Henrik might be willing to make the change now. Mm-hmm. 2X a little bit lighter than heavier than the 2S, but not really noticeably at this point. They're so light. So really, really good to work with both of them now.
Well, I mean, the 2S is like, what is it? 625 grams. Like it's 625 grams. It's the lightest stick on the market. And that's, of course, has that ergo spine, which almost looks like a player stick.
Yeah.
Cut right up in the back of the paddle, rather than having a solid paddle. So it is a little bit of a different feel. I guess it's all relative. It's funny, we were talking about it. How does it feel? We're trying to figure out how to describe whether the 2X Pro really feels like foam core. Mm-hmm. You know what the reality is? None of our testers have been in foam core.
Yeah.
The guys left in foam core, the most part, the only guys left in foam core are beer leaguers and NHL guys who just refuse to switch because they don't want to change.
Well, it's the beer leaguers that I asked the question for, because you're wondering that, and you're trying to figure out all this terminology about foam core and composite, and what's the true real difference when it comes down to it. And you say feel and puck handling, I would think too.
Yeah, no question. When you first time you grab a composite stick, the puck if you got a hard rim or you got a puck coming in or someone's passing it back to you with a fair bit of velocity, you need to provide more cushion than you would on a foam core in terms of it not popping off. Like there's more bounce off a composite stick blade than there is on a foam core. Like that's just the way it is. But you adjust, and within a few skates, you just cushion a little more. It's like having a different baseball mitt, right? You just kind of absorb it a little bit more and make sure you accept a little bit more of the blow and it doesn't bounce off. That's the only difference, really.
Hey, I don't think we've mentioned, but by the time this podcast hits the internet airwaves, our review of the 2X Pro stick should be live at InGoalMag.com. So go check that out. There's photos, video, our first impressions, a lot of good stuff there if you want to know more about the stick than we're giving away here on the podcast.
And some pretty cool stuff from Linus Ullmark of the Buffalo Sabres, who walked us through some of, not just the stick, but the way he tapes it up. He is a true gear geek. And so we did a bunch of stuff with him, some with video, some just talking to him when the Sabres were in town this year that we've been kind of sitting on. We're going to start to unleash that, starting with a segment in this gear review of the 2X Pro stick.
And where will people find that? Where can people find that?
I would believe that is at InGoalMag.com. And while we're saying that, we might want to pull out the announcer's voice to remind people, if you've got questions you'd like to send in, comments, let us know how the podcast is going. Podcast at InGoalMag.com.
Going to bring everybody a treat in a couple of weeks. Working on the audio right now. I was honored to host a goalie roundtable, a hot stove, this past week in Summerside, Prince Edward Island, for the Boys and Girls Club. On the panel, Drew McIntyre, longtime pro, had a couple of shots in the NHL. He's from Cornwall, PEI, and also on the stage with him, Jerry Cheevers and Grant Fear, which was really cool. So 3 totally different generations of guys, and talked about the goaltending and their best games and coaches and dealing with different scenarios from their generation. So Cheesy, Fiersy, and Drew. I don't. Drew doesn't have I guess we call him Mac.
So right off the hop, you ask us where Kevin's been, where I'm going, and you hold that till an hour and 20 into the podcast to let us know what you've been up to. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, I'm the host.
No. Come on.
Throw it to you guys. Randy from the Trailer Park Boys was there too.
Was he a goalie?
He wasn't playing goal. He had his shirt off. You don't want to see that.
He would have fit right in at our golf tournament then, I can tell you that.
Yes, I would tend to agree, not knowing exactly, because the Harvest is a good golf course. I think that Randy would have fit in with you guys very well. Good job today, guys.
Thanks. And hey,
you, brother.
When we get to Drew McIntyre, I hope you ask him about Mr. Potato Head on his mask.
You know what? I didn't, unfortunately.
See, we're even for me not asking Reimer about his number. We're good.
It was at a dinner with a couple of thousand people, so I was trying to keep it. I really wanted to go goalie geek like on this podcast, and I had to keep it somewhat generic, but there's some good conversation that will bring you in a couple of weeks. Well,
the answer involves his pride in PEI potato, so it would have been good for the locals.
Yes. You're good. Got a great point there. A takeaway from this episode: James Reimer grew up in a tiny rural prairie setting, guys. He started playing hockey when he was 12, didn't have a goalie coach until major junior, and somehow he's working on a double-digit professional career. Any one of those points would make him unique, never mind all in one mix. Creating one's own path should not be viewed as beating the odds, but think of it this way. Look at it as showing the world how much you really want something. I'm Darren Millard. Thanks to Jono at the Hockey Shop, James Reimer. For David Hutchison, Kevin Woodley, thanks for listening to InGoal Radio, the podcast, presented by The Hockey Shop. Source for sports, thehockeyshop.com.